Ahoy there, today on the Red Sea, people who work in human resources. What is the weirdest malarkey you have seen? Call center employee calls HR to complain about their supervisor. Has abusive ... He would not even let me leave my desk. Supervisor calls HR to complain about employee. Can you please tell that she's allowed to leave her desk? Oh my god ... She's malark eating in her trash can. It may sound humorous, but there were significant mental issues at the heart of this. Guy came into the interview in sweatpants and a hoodie and said he did not need the job because of how much money he was making illegally, but he wanted to have a job so the eyes did not get suspicious. Weirdest part is I do not live in America. I very much doubt the eyes cares about Canadian tax returns. Caught a site manager with like 50 plus pairs of panties hidden all over his office in Ziploc bags, a multitude of sex toys, and over 100k in cash stuffed in ceiling tiles. Took a while to unravel all of that. So you locked out his building access and told the VPs you found 60k in the ceiling, right? Haha ... We did lock him out, but this was in an AHEEM, CA and an ATL, GAP, large global conglomerate, so I was not present. We terminated him, but during the fallout it became clear he truly had a very vague idea of how much was up there, so his manager could certainly have pocketed some cash. The whole story was bizarre. My dad works in HR. He just told me about a day when they had to lay off about half of the company. It was crazy and there were a whole lot of moving parts that day. Unfortunately, in all the craziness, no one remembered to tell this one new hire that sadly the position he was hired for was no longer affordable. So he came into the office only to see everyone clearing out their desks and leaving. And then ... he got laid off. An hour into his first day, he said the guy understood, but it was the most horrible he ever felt for someone in his life. One of the candidates I was interviewing via Skype, answered a phone while in his boxers and a tank top, then stood up to grab his blazer that was probably about 3 feet away. I had to see him in his stretched out boxers. 2. Had a porn site up and open during a shared screen trial to see how well he can use the digital classroom. I had to remind him I can see his screen. He goes, oh yeah sorry. Next, instead of just closing it from the corner of his partially hidden window, he clicks open the window in full view then closes it. That was nice. The family of the guy who passed away came to speak to us. It was in a factory environment. To get pension docs etc. We sent them away with a to-do list. 1 hour later reception pinged us saying Mr. X's family was here. Strange. The documents take a few days to get. Nope. New family. Yup. The guy had 2 different families who were about to have a fun surprise. Well, because both of them were nominated beneficiaries of his will, we had to call both of them in. Had to highlight the nominations. Then the main squeeze found out about side hustle and it was crazy. Wife took side hustle to court for fraud. She lost. Moral of the story: don't write your ducking mistress as a retirement fund beneficiary. Just leave her with a Bitcoin account like a normal person. The maintenance guy had been living up above the ceiling of the building. He had built a little cubby living area with electricity and a small fridge and everything. Edit. 4 years. Hey, that happened at the university where I used to work. Guy had had a nasty divorce and set up a cot in the basement under the structures lab. Dunno how he tolerated that. It was loud from big gas hydraulic pumps running all the time and probably averaged about 35 deg.C. Plus, the ceiling was about 1.5 meters high. The floor was covered in grime and oil, and the place stank. He was gone before I started, but I heard he'd been living there for a few months before getting caught. At the university where I work, they found a homeless woman living in an unused office. Kind of smart, actually. Not now, of course, with universities shut down. But generally universities are safe places, well patrolled, with clean restrooms and students dropping change and abandoning uneaten food. During normal times, there's always a bake sale or hot dog sale going on. Almost every day there's an organization offering free pizza if you go listen to their talk about HPV, careers, Jesus, or trends in the energy sector. If you get bored, there are free concerts and talks. And no one will notice you in a crowded lecture hall, or you can just go read books or magazines in the library. Keep yourself clean and tidy, and you can be homeless a long time at a university. The new receptionist was coming in every morning and opening up programs/documents to make it look like they were busy, and they'd sit with one hand on their mouse and one hand on their keyboard and stare blankly at their screen for 8 hours a day and not do anything. They'd also consistently pick up the phone and hang it up without saying anything so that it would stop ringing. I sat in on their termination. and the employee started screaming at the manager about how they were doing an amazing job and they had to give them another chance. I was 100% confident that they were just trying to get some easy money and would not be surprised that they were finally getting fired. The whole thing was just bizarre. I once had a temp job in HR. I was scanning lots of old personnel files, and the one perk of the job was reading old complaints against people. The best one I came across was a mediation caused by one member of staff accusing another of witchcraft. She turned me into a newt. I used to work at a staffing agency that placed people at manufacturing positions. Everyone had to be drug tested at the office as part of the orientation. If the pickup came back as inconclusive, we'd send the potential hire to a medical lab. They would take another drug test and the lab could determine if the person was on a prescription or using illegal drugs and therefore not eligible for hire. So one guy failed his drug test at the lab. He came back to the office claiming that it was not his fault. He explained that he was riding in a car and he stuck his head over the window. Then, when the car passed under a bridge, someone threw a bunch of cocaine off the bridge. It hit him in the face and he accidentally inhaled it. Imagine his luck if that were actually true. We had this new hire. I heard about him through the grapevine. He was fired from his last job for masturbating in the break room. Somehow, he was hired to my company. God knows why, because I haven't not heard a single good thing about from anyone ever. His job was to sweep the floor of our factory. That's not back-breaking work. It's pretty much endless. But you can take it slow and have time to chit-chat with other employee and roam around. We have retired and disabled people who do that job and they are fine with it. In the first 3 weeks he was there, I got so many write-up. Extended break time. Job not done after multiple request. Smoking on the job and not in designated area. Constantly on his phone. Complaint. Racist/sexist joke. Body odor. OSHA violation. Not wearing PPE. About him. It was hard to keep track. So I did what I always do. Fast track his termination and send it to the head of HR. I hear nothing about it until a few weeks later. I start receiving complaint about him again. I go see the head of HR, asking if those were just delayed paperwork, because in my mind he was fired weeks ago. Turns out, he was never fired. He was the nephew of the head of HR. She transferred him to another department. She took every complaint about him directly, except one that got to me. He was now a security guard, but not like you see in music festival. He was a button operator. He operated the button to let the people in the factory and kept track of everybody that entered or left the site. He was under training with the sweetest old lady there is. Everybody, even the CEO, call her grandma because she just so sweet. I encounter grandma on break one day and she looked disturbed. It was not her usual break time. So I ask her what she's doing in the break room alone so early. She tell me it's new hire ... Personal time. I ask her what she mean. She tell me, well, you know, I made lots of complaint about it ... Haven't you read them? I say, no, none of them got to me. She looked disturbed and almost like crying. She then tell me, since he was transferred to her, he noticed there was a computer at his post to logins and apps. Bear in mind, this computer does not connect to the internet. Well, the second day, while grandma was gone to the bathroom, he started masturbating with porn he brought from home on a flash drive. She caught him and he acted like it was no big deal. In the weeks that followed, he continued to masturbate on the job to the point where he would not even stop. When grandma caught him, he told her, I don't give a duck if you watch, but if you don't want to see it, just leave. So she made a schedule where every 2 hours she would leave for 15 minutes for him to do his business. I was pissed and went straight to the head of HR with it. I told her that grandma had gotten a lawyer and was threatening to sue the company. I knew it was false, but that's the only thing that could make things move. The matter was transferred to the legal department and he was fired that very morning. The head of HR still argued that without proof, we could not fire him. The meeting ended with her storming out and saying, fine, do whatever you want. She quit a few months after that. And a guy who worked the overpass shift because he was doing support for our Asia/Europe regions got written up for improper use of company systems. He had dozens if not hundreds of Google image searches related to foot fetish stuff, like insert celebrity hair feet along with other random stuff like cute toes, etc. Like dude ... You're in it. You know this stuff is tracked and that your boss could easily monitor it. I was a recruiter, and you would be shocked to see what some people actually have as their personal email. Most people have come around to using just their name, but then every once in a while you'll have to verify that brown glitter 69 is in fact how they would like to be contacted. One of my relatives worked in tech support for a really high profile company in Silicon Valley during the height of the dot-com boom. Some guy who desperately wanted to work there was emailing his resume to HR 1000 times every day. Several times a day, the number of emails would get too overwhelming. So the people in HR would just select everything in the inbox and delete all of it, whether it was from the applicant or not. My relative had to show them how to filter emails from the applicant. This was a tech company? Just because it is a high-tech company does not mean everyone is computer savvy. Saw 17 years in the service desk and our world dealing with situations just like this in Silicon Valley. I no longer work in HR or at this company, but it's my favorite story from my time there. Our benefits team made the decision to eliminate reserved parking as lots of employees were frustrated when they walked past dozens of empty spots in the reserved lots every day. This new policy applied to all of the company's locations. Of course, the benefits manager received hundreds of complaints in the first few days from people insisting they needed an exception for their own personal spot. The best reason by far was from one person who needed a spot close to the door because they were terrified of bobcats. No other context. We did not have bobcats near the corporate office, so at first we thought they meant construction equipment. Turns out there actually were sightings of bobcats, like the animal, near this person's location. Last I heard they were told to arrive earlier to get a closer spot and did not get an exception. Not exactly weird, but I work in HR and we have two people with the exact same name, but in different departments. This still causes confusion sometimes, but the most awkward was last year at the Christmas party. We have this annual Employee of the Year award and the name was announced before mentioning the department or other info. Although I warned the MC not to do that, as we had two people with the same name. Let's just say the wrong one got the most excited until he realized it was not him. Had to delete someone from the system following them being murdered. Was a bad day. Edit. Over the years I have deleted 7 deaths including the murder, 1 pedophile and 1 murderer. I had to do that for a work colleague that died in his sleep. I'd spoken to him less than 2 hours before he died. It's a weird feeling. I worked at an academic library and had to freeze accounts for deceased and missing students and external users. We just removed the books from the catalog and asked the collections team to order a replacement. Fees were wiped off and address on the account changed to our own to ensure no notifications went to the deceased families. Sometimes families would get in touch if they found the books to ask about returning them, but we always insisted that they only needed to do so for their own benefit and when they were ready to, as we did not want to rush them. Did not have to do it often, but we always tried to do the best we could. I had to see a video of a guy who malarkey himself during work while running to the restroom because his manager would not let him leave a meeting early. The guy had IBD and the manager knew this. So the video show him running down the hall and literally a few feet from the restrooms. He starts malarkeying himself and you see it coming down his leg pant. He looked to be in pain cause he kinda collapsed and then got back up. People were baffled when they saw this live. Lol, manager equals fired. So definitely the weirdest malarkey I have ever seen. Literally. I used to work in HR at a large corporation. There was a big HR back office team doing a lot of processing and data entry including employees' bank info for their salary. It just so happened that on the same day 2 employees with the same name started and a huge clusterfuck ensued. First, the banking information was entered for the wrong person. One of them realized and had it corrected, but the other was not fixed, so both salaries went to one person. The unpaid guy started refusing to come to work, but payroll said that the payment cleared and the account was in his name, so he was terminated for refusing to come to work. He kept calling, and the HR support team kept misidentifying him as the other guy who was still working for us. So when they raised a ticket to get his bank information changed, they changed the info of the wrong guy. So now the guy who does not work for us is getting paid the salary of a guy who does. When this was finally worked out, the first guy was given his job back. But on his first day back, security misidentified him and issued him a badge of the other employee. So now he was clocking hours for the other guy and not getting paid again because he never clocked in for himself. It took about 3 months for all this to be worked out. Moral of the story is use a ducking email address to identify people. Edit. Yes, the employees had unique IDs. The problem was people were searching for them by name and tunnel visioning on the first result. Also, I was suggesting the email can be used to identify people face to face or over the phone. I was not suggesting it should be used as the primary key in a database. Ugh, this story frustrates me. I do not have a common name, but turns out someone at my company has the exact same name as me. So when I got hired, they deleted my account because they thought that I was a duplicate employee account. This resulted in getting locked in the parking lot for half an hour until someone came and badged me out my first day after orientation. That was just one of the many issues I encountered. I had a coworker who was hired as a temp, left for about 6 months, was hired back full time, and worked for 1.5 years before his account was wiped because it was designated as belonging to an inactive temp. He had a common name, and apparently about 2 months later, his new account was wiped again after a person with the same name quit. It really put a lot of confidence in our IT system. Not HR but it. We had a guy start and immediately start using his work computer to watch porn. Now this immediately caused some alarms to go off on it. So because it was my job to keep an eye on stuff like this, I decided to do this guy a solid because it was his first day and physically go to his office and tell him he could not do that at work. Guy gets all kinds of pissed off at me and storms off to HR to lodge a complaint against me for trying to tell him how to do his job. Dude gets fired because he stormed into HR and told them how the IT gug was trying to tell him that he could not watch porn in the privacy of his office. I work HR for a call center. Entire company has around 500 employees. Maybe 250 of them are in the call center. Entry level work. Tiny bit more than minimum wage. A girl started her first week doing really well, and then week 2 got really weird. She walked into the CEO's office, on another floor in the building, while he was meeting with someone, to demand that he buy her a dog because she thought having a companion would improve her work performance. That was the entirety of her rationale. Edit. Many are asking, no, she did not get the dog. I was not in the room with the CEO, so I do not know exactly how he handled it. He is an exceptionally nice human being, so I assume he handled it kindly. Though, I mean it made its way back to HR pretty quick, so he definitely told some people about it. My colleague spoke with her about it and was just like, no, that's not a thing, WTF. She was fired soon after for unrelated reasons. Attendance, I believe. Also many are questioning if she had some kind of mental disorder. I have no idea. Female GM banging 3 co-workers at the same time. Fight broke out once everyone found out about it. I had this with 2 VPs banging the same director, sometimes in the same night. One of them was a cook who was involved with the cartels. He ended up getting deported, then had his head blown off shortly later in Honduras. Obscuring a few details here. You'll understand why in a second. There was a mid-level supervisor at a state agency I never got along with. Guy was nasty, argumentative, real piece of work, but still had a decent amount of people loyal to him. I come in one day and has not there. Everyone was distraught. Turns out law enforcement had come after the guy, caught him red-handed trafficking child pornography. Rather than arrest him immediately, they gave him the option to return home, settle his affairs, maybe call his lawyer. He took the opportunity to simply hang himself in his own garage instead. The next couple of weeks was just damage control among the staff when the details came out. Horrible situation all around. Years ago I worked HR for a retail store. A manager would always clock out on time, however the alarm would not be set until about 30-45 minutes after he clocked out. Since we had a lot of trouble with internal theft, we assumed he was stealing. Loss prevention approved the installation of cameras across all stores, but we were told not to talk about it to see if we could catch any internal theft. The way the ceiling was set up, the cameras were not too obvious, but if you knew what to look for it was quite noticeable. Anyway, turned out this dude was banging a co-worker who was 16. He was 25, expecting his first child with his wife. I did not see the footage, but our regional manager of loss prevention did and had to turn it over to the police. The real kicker is the girl's dad was a captain on said police force. Edit. I'm not sure what happened to the guy, unfortunately I did not sit in when LP interviewed him. According to my district manager, the authorities were notified, but I'm not sure if he was arrested after the interview was finished. We were not allowed to discuss what happened, but word got around. This was in Texas and the age of consent is 17, and the female had just turned 16 a few months prior. As for her, she officially resigned, and last I heard she became a nurse. I worked closely with HR in a call center. Y'all get some crazy stuff. Guy that carried a cooler every day was wiping malarkey on random walls and desks. It was his malarkey in his cooler. We thought it was his lunch. He got caught when he wiped it on the front desk directly in sight of the camera. Another guy had a colostomy bag that he refused to empty. When it got full, you would find these trails of liquid poo randomly, and we had to throw out 4 chairs that he ruined. He was fired quickly and tried to claim discrimination because he was a veteran. You'd also get a crazy amount of period stains on chairs. Look, it happens. But when it's the same few people, And we have free sanitary supplies in the bathroom. You know they just do not care. This reminded me of a contractor on a project I also worked. Friend of mine worked in HR. She told me someone was urinating in their cube. They had moved this contractor a few times because his cube would start to smell of urine. Guy claimed he had no idea what was causing it. Company would move him, have area professionally cleaned, and process would start again. After the third move they put cameras up. Turns out contractor would take a coffee cup to the bathroom, urinate in it, and then return to cube and pour it out on the floor. He was fired and escorted out with his cup. I work at my family's business in the industrial sector, and HR is one of the hats I wear. 2018 was insanely busy for us, so we had to hire a staffing agency to get some general labor guys in. It's a simple wax on, wax off kind of job. The most memorable part of that hectic summer was one temp that the agency sent over for third shift, midnight 8 AM. We will call him Bobby for this story. Bobby shows up wearing nothing but a pair of cargo shorts, so we had to provide pants, shirt, and steel toes. Come break time at 4, he decided to go out to the parking lot and scale the building, about 30 feet. Probably climbed a tree or something, had a smoke, and managed to turn the security camera away from the parking lot. Bobby then walked away from the job and went home in the uniform and boots we provided for him. We assumed he wanted to break into some of the cars, but nothing was gone. Ended up costing probably $300 for training, uniform, and just wasting our time. To sum it up, temp employee scaled the 30 feet building and played with the security cameras on his first day. This was in the early 2000s. When people still sent paper applications. I worked for a gaming company, so we got a fair amount of unsolicited applications, usually young people trying to break into the industry. But this application letter was extra special. It started with, "I'm in the center of an international conspiracy," followed by 2 tightly printed A4 pages of the freakiest malarkey imaginable. Researcher onto something, hunted by dark forces, agent of other unseen forces he fell out of favor with, and a few weird political tangents. Wanted a job with us because he needed to lay low for a while before he could get out of the country. We were suitably freaked out by the mere fact that he had our office address, chose not to reply, and forwarded the whole thing to corporate HR. I was an HR manager for a small company that shared an office with a mid-sized business. Their HR manager really disliked us, mainly because our company cultures really clashed. It was not a big deal for a long time, maybe just a little tense, until one day they decided to terminate one of the shared administrative staff members. I was not part of this decision, though I agreed with it, and technically that was their employee. The other HR manager, let's call her Cheryl, calls me into her office to inform me the next morning that this admin had been let go. Cheryl made it clear I was not to email our company's employees and inform them of the change in employment status. As she put it, they'll find out when they get in, and she isn't not here, and if they do not, well, that's not my problem. Lovely. That is not how handle communication matters in my company, and I was completely uncomfortable with it. So I go to a VP and discuss what we should do. He says to hold off for a day, let everything settle, then go back and work out a strategy with Cheryl on how to redirect employees who use the old admin until we can hire a new one. Most of our employees, unlike this, work out in the field, so it would be important to communicate with those individuals specifically, but it could hold a day. We knew that the old email for the admin was being forwarded to Cheryl, so at least someone was watching the emails in case something critical came through. Okay, cool. Not 2 hours later, Cheryl comes barreling into the cubicle area of our office screaming about how our employees are idiots. They clearly are too dumb to understand that the employee who was terminated the night before was no longer with the company. She was sick of getting our stupid emails and did not want to have to deal with our incompetent employees emailing her non-stop. I was a horrible HR manager. I did not know how to control my people. I clearly was not able to handle my job. Just insulting me, our employees, the entire company at the top of her psychotic lungs. I was clearly to blame, and she was going to get me in so much trouble. She goes running into the CEO's office and starts flipping out about me. It was a complete clusterfuck. She had friggin' set me up as a scapegoat in case her lovely approach to HR went wrong, and when it did, immediately tried to throw me under the bus for something she did. I believe that someone had sent the admin a time-critical email the night before, and Cheryl had not caught it, and the deadline had passed for the item maybe 15 minutes before she actually opened the request. Thankfully it already talked to the VP, who was a lifesaver. Cheryl was reminded that whatever had happened was her damn fault, and she was told behind closed doors that if she ever did that again, our company would be logging major complaints with her company, and the CEOs of the two companies were close friends. She told every new hire they had that our company was full of lazy, entitled assholes, and actively encouraged hostility between people in each company. She forbid our company from going into their part of the office, despite the shared and partially paid for by us soda fridge being over there, would host office lunches for her company and bring the leftovers across the hall to other companies so that our employees could not get some. It was the most petty, childish reaction to her attempt to slander me and get me in trouble. We moved offices in under 6 months. My wife works in HR. She had to question a high-ranking employee about an incident where a lower-ranking employee who was being talked to about her inappropriate wardrobe choices which clearly violated company policy decided in an act of protest to take out her quite large left breast and smack it down on the table and ask him in her thick New England accent, "Is this too much cleavage for you?" Two people had cut a hole in the wall between their offices. They pushed their filing cabinets to hide the hole on both sides. Cleaning staff was asked to deep clean the offices one day and they found the hole. Both parties involved were married, not to each other. They were having sex through the wall. Edit so I do not have to answer the same question a few times. The hole was cut so that just the body was visible. Heads were not. I did not ask logistics, but my imagination has led me to believe doggy style. She backed up as far as she could, and they had sex in the wall for lack of better understanding. Unfortunately, it is the end of the video, but do not worry, there are many more coming. Like and subscribe for more videos from the Red Sea. Thanks for watching.